radio show on Building Fortunes Radio with your host, motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Be sure to check out Greg at www.gregdwyer.com. That's www.gregdwyer.com. Now on to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Hi everyone, we are talking about this topic of mind reading. How to know what people are thinking without being a mind reader. So today is the last broadcast for 2024. And I promised myself I would get all 4 of them in, so this is the last one, so I'm really excited. We've been talking about the concept of figuring out how people are processing your information. We're going to talk a little bit about sensory acuity. We're going to conclude talking about the personality of yellow. If you remember, we talked about red, green, and blue. I'll give you a little review on that. If you're in sales or you deal with people, you're in the right place. So what is sensory acuity? Sensory acuity is that you are aware of how your communication is impacting someone else. Now, one of the biggest barriers to sensory acuity is that when you're talking to someone, you're 100% in your head thinking about what you're going to say, what you're going to do. And sensory acuity is about feedback. It's the feedback loop. This is what's really important. So let me give you an example. The other day I went into a bank and I was talking to the guy behind the counter who I've known. He's been a show or two that I've done. And I said to him, I said, I noticed that so-and-so doesn't work here anymore. None of my business, but what happened? And I could read his face that he didn't want to talk about it, or it wasn't a positive situation. He could have said something like, oh, he got a promotion, he moved on. All I can tell you is in a nanosecond, I knew without him saying anything that the subject matter wasn't something that we were going to talk about. So that's sensory acuity. It's being aware of how your communication is landing on the other side with the other person. You're picking up clues, nonverbal clues. I mean, sometimes they'll actually say something, but not all the time do people say what they mean, right? So sensory acuity has to do with feedback, the loop of feedback of communication. One of the examples that I talk about is years ago I went to Fiji and I was on retreat. I was vacationing for about a week and there were a group of people that went to a seminar. I wasn't involved in it, but we all shared a taxi on the way to the airport. So there was a guy sitting in front of me with 2 women sitting next to him. And he was talking about his network marketing program and his products to these 2 women that were sitting next to him. Now I was in the back, so I was watching the whole thing play out. He was going on and on and on about his product and about his services and how great it was. One woman was looking out the window. She wasn't even paying attention. The other woman was massaging her neck. And finally she turned around and she said, I have a headache. Would you please stop talking? Now, he didn't pick up on it. And afterwards, when we got alone and I was talking to him, I said, dude, sensory acuity. And he went, what? I said, when you were talking about your product and your opportunity and all the great things that you have, you could have been reading your audience. It's the same thing with a performer. It's the same thing with a speaker. Someone walks out on stage and they're reading the audience. Or if they don't read the audience immediately, as time goes on, they're reading the audience. Now, I do a show on mind reading. I do a show on magic. I do a Halloween show. I do a holiday show. And I read the audience. So when I pick somebody to help me, I do my best to pick someone that's going to work. It's going to be great communication because it's possible to pick a person that is not going to cooperate or is just going to give you a hard time. You never know what's going on. So sensory acuity is being aware of how your communication is impacting the other person. I was interviewed for PBS in November. They found me, they did some research, and they called me up and sent me an email, and they said, we'd like to have you on the radio station. I said, fine. We didn't rehearse anything. We just simply talked. It was a conversation. We recorded it. It's also going to be on the radio. And in the middle of it, they asked me a political question. It was around the time of the election or a little bit after that. And I could just feel that I didn't answer it correctly, or I didn't answer it the way they wanted me to answer it. And so I literally said, I kind of feel like the energy has left the room, or the energy is gone. And they said, yes, yeah, we're going to edit that part out. So you don't have to be a mind reader. You just have to be sensitive. People who are empathetic towards other people's emotions, or they're just, I don't know, aware of other people and how they think, or picking up vibes from people, they're really good at this thing called sensory acuity. So being a mind reader isn't so much about getting into a person's mind and literally reading it. It has to do with picking up on clues from other people, which is really, truly important. That's sensory acuity. So let's give a little review here, because I know it's been a couple weeks, a couple months actually, since we've gone over this. So we talked about some personalities. We talked about the red, we talked about the green, we talked about the blue personalities, and really what this has to do with is how a person sees the world. There are some people that are very red oriented, and I learned this from my friend Jerry Clark. He wrote a program called The Magic of Colors, and a person that is red is very dominant, very goal-oriented, I would say task-oriented. They know exactly what they want and they go after it. They're not necessarily people-oriented, right? They're going after something, they know what the goal is, and they're going to get it. Now, these are not people you make small talk with. These are not people you give feedback to. These are not people who are really going to go to a party and sit around and talk about small talk. The red personality, they tend to be very driven towards an outcome or a goal. The other personality that kind of balances them, we're going to talk a little bit about the yellow personality after the break. They are more oriented towards relationships and people. We'll talk about that later. The blue personality is a person that just loves to talk. They love to have fun. If you call them up and you say, hey, we're going to do something, and you mention the word fun, or there's a party, or there's a social gathering, there's going to be music, these people are there. And then there's the green personality. The green personality is very analytical. They're very detailed oriented, and they want to be right. So the red personality, goal oriented. The green personality, they want to be right. The blue, they want to have fun. The yellow is all about relationships. Relationships are really important to these people. Now, I've been working with and studying with Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins for many, many years, over 20 years. And I will tell you a secret about people that you really have to study his material to understand what he's talking about. But he talks about 3 areas of focus that when you focus on it, when you're communicating with people, you can figure out what motivates them or where they're coming from. All right, so 3 points. The first point is their state. For instance, if you're in real estate, or you're in sales, or you're working the phones, or you're just working with people in your office, let's say, state is really important. What is state? State is the emotional state of a person. It's what they're focusing on, how they're focusing on things, what things mean to them, right? So someone could be told, hey, listen, we got to cut back. We don't know if we're going to hire you next year. One person could be elated. Another person could be full of fear, and upset. What's the difference? It's what the communication means to the person and how it landed and how they're reacting about it. So it's their focus, their emotional focus, their emotional state of mind. So if you pick up the phone and you're in sales and the person, is going through a divorce, or there's sickness in the family, or there's financial stress, or some terrible thing is going on, and you try to build a relationship or talk to them, most likely they're just not going to listen to you. It's the state, the state that they're in. You could walk into a venue and you could be working, some kind of project, whether it's a business meeting or a show, and you can find out the director or the person you're working with is going to get fired, or something's going to happen, or their husband or wife left them. You have to be very sensitive to the state of mind that they're in. That's really important. Now, what leaders do is they tend to lead people into positive emotional states. But just being aware that people go in and out of emotional states like the weather, right? The weather changes constantly. It's really important to be aware that when you're communicating with someone, they might be thinking about something else or someone else or another situation. In other words, they might be in a bad mood or they might be in a really great mood. You never know. But being sensitive to that is really, truly important. So that's emotional state. It's where people live emotionally. If you've ever talked to people and they go, I know it sounds great, but, and then they talk about negativity, or they tend to always find the thing that's wrong with the situation and they tend to be depressed or anxious. That's what I'm talking about, right? Their emotional state. The next thing is their belief, or what Tony talks about as the map of reality, their global belief. It's their rules about life, it's their values, right? So when you're talking to someone, you might be in a great state of mind and they might not, right? And so there's a big mismatch. But the other thing is just as important, is not everyone sees the world the same way. They just don't. Someone can see it totally different from someone else. And I guess that's the reason why we have so much conflict when it comes to communication with people. Not everybody sees the world the same way. So the map of reality, or the global belief, is how a person reconstructs the world to themselves. Like right now, it's the end of the year 2024 and we're going into 2025. You might talk to some people and they're like, I'm so excited about this year coming up. I'm so glad 2024 is over. It was the worst year ever, yada, 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 and they tell you a story. Or you could talk to somebody else and say, 2024 was absolutely wonderful. And I'm thinking that 2025 is even going to be better, right? So what's the difference? The difference is people's emotional states, but it's also their model of the world, how they see the world, how they re-represent the world to themselves. And how do people do it? How do I do it? How do you do it? It's your global beliefs. People are, life is, universe, men are, women are, business people are. So it's our global beliefs about certain things that we may not even be aware of. And then it's also our rules. Rules for communication, rules for life. And so when two people get together and let's say they get married and they're celebrating Thanksgiving, or maybe they're celebrating Christmas or New Year's, they might have different rules. Well, we don't open our presents now. We open them the day after, or we do this, or, we don't do this in our family. So when you take two families and you put them together, right, when people get married or families connect, you see that they have different global beliefs, or they have different rules about life and reality, and a lot of times there's conflict. So being aware of someone's emotional state, very important. How are you doing today, right? Checking in with people to see what's on their mind. And then also understanding that they have a map of reality of what, you're presenting to them, or whatever you're talking to them about. They may be interested in it or not interested in it. It might be something that is something that turns them off because it's tied to something that is in their past. This is what I'm talking about, global beliefs and rules. Be sensitive to that. And then lastly, the target. Tony talks about 6 chief needs that people want to meet these needs. One is certainty, the other one is uncertainty, significance. The other one is, let me see, I'm forgetting for a second. We have, I'm not certain what I'm talking about. All right, the first one's certainty, other one is uncertainty, significance, love and connection, and then growth, and then finally contribution, which are the last two are spiritual, or values that make us whole, giving back and growing as a person. So what he talks about is that everybody seeks ways to meet these needs. It's their target in life, right? It's their winning formula. It's the thing that they're going after. So when you're talking to someone, it's important to figure out how they're wired. And we talked about this with the different colors. If you're talking to a red personality, they're wired towards goals. What can you do to help me reach my goal? If you're talking to a green personality, you've got to realize that they want to be right, and there's no sense of arguing with them. You argue with a green personality, you're going to get nowhere. Why? Because they have to be right. So what do? You just move on. A blue personality, they want to have fun, and then of course the yellow is all about relationships. So when you step back and you look at this and you tap in all of these 4 personalities, and in addition to that, you're very sensitive towards sensory acuity, meaning you are aware of how your communication is landing with the other person. And then you realize that not everybody sees the world the same way. You have Democrats, you have Republicans, you have Protestants, you have Catholics, you have people on the right, people on the left. You have so many different views. And who's right? Well, they're all right according to their global belief and their map of reality. You can't necessarily change it. So it's being aware of it and being sensitive to it that will help you, win friends and influence people. And by the way, if you've never read that book, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it is a must as far as figuring out how to connect with people and how to influence people in an ethical way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick commercial, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this yellow personality. So hold tight.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at gregdwyerebook.com. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
So there's a plug for my ebook. Believe it or not, you don't have to put in an email, nothing. All you have to do is just go to www.gregdwyerebook.com. It's a evergreen piece that I'm very proud of. I came back from a workshop and I sat and I just wrote it within, 12 hours, 10 hours, 5 hours, I forget. It was a couple years back, and then I handed it to a graphic designer and we created the piece. I'm very proud of it. It's oriented towards you, not me. It's talking about, how to make things happen in your life. And a lot of it has to do with the topic of focus. So I hope that you'll get that book and read it. And I'd love to hear your feedback. Okay, so now we're talking about the last piece of the puzzle. We're talking about yellow. Now, yellow is in contrast to the red. The red personality, they see something they want and they're going to go after it. They're very driven towards results and they're very goal oriented. They don't tend to be people oriented. The yellow personality, it's really about family. It's really about relationships. It's about connection. Now, many years ago, I'm talking over 20 years ago, I was involved in direct sales. And I was making some phone calls and I was speaking to somebody in California, I remember it. And I could tell by just, sensory acuity that they were very much a yellow personality, very much into the family. So I asked her about her family and she told me, and I told her about my family and I made a connection. If I came across this way, which is the red personality, to the yellow, there might have been some attraction for sure, but I wanted to match and I wanted to mirror her personality in my conversation. So I talked about not what was important to me per se, I talked about what was important to her, which, tell me about your daughter, tell me about your husband, tell me about your mom, your dad, tell me about your family, the pets that you have. And by talking to her about what was important to her, I built a connection and signed her up in my company, because the connection was there. So understanding these personalities, I wish that someone taught me this earlier. I learned this from Jerry Clark. He has a program called The Magic of Colors. I think he still sells it. I think it used to be CDs. Before that, it was cassettes. Probably now it's MP3. But if you want more information on this, that would be a great place to get information and study these personalities. It's important to realize that not everybody sees the world the same way. It's impossible. And the other thing is, it's also impossible to please everyone. You're not going to be able to please everyone. Why? Because people see the world differently. They have different targets that they're going after. They have different global beliefs. They have different values. And of course, because of that, they are focusing on certain things that put them in a certain state. So if you're in sales, and I think, if you're listening to this, most likely you're in sales, and I think all of us are in sales, it's important to be able to be flexible. Being flexible. In fact, the person that is the most flexible is the one that is going to influence the most. Now, when you hear about these personalities, green personality, they're very detailed oriented. They want to be right. You think about the red personality that just wants to get what they want and they're focused on their task, and the yellow personality that's connected to people, and the blue that just wants to have fun. It's not about being typecast. It's not like saying, okay, I'm a red, I'm never going to be a yellow, or I'm a green, I'm never going to be a blue. All of us have these different aspects of these colors in it. And we tend to be dominant in one area. When my friend Jerry Clark gets up to speak, he's a very red personality. I know him pretty well. He'll get up and speak and he'll teach this information. Then he'll say to the audience, what do you think I fall into as far as a category? Which category do you think I fall into? Is it the yellow, green, blue, red? What is it? And people say, oh man, you're so funny. You laugh, you want to have fun, you're a blue. I mean, hands down, most people say he's a blue. And he's a red. So what he's doing is he doesn't want to just appeal to a small percentage of people. The red personality is a small percentage of people. It's not very large. I don't have the percentages memorized. But by going out and speaking or training or teaching or being a salesperson and just running with one personality, you're not going to appeal to the rest of the people in the audience, right? So this is really important. You want to be able to appeal to the people that are very analytical, the people that want to have fun, and the people that want to make connections. That's how you do it. So if you're a speaker or you're in sales, being flexible is the key. It's just like, we talk about visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Some people are really visual. They have to see it. Other people are auditory. They have to hear it. You ask them a question and their eyes go back and forth this way. You ask somebody that's visual, they look up because they're making pictures in their mind. Or you ask somebody a question, they're very kinesthetic. They tend to look down and they're connecting with their feelings. When you're talking to a large group of people, or you're talking to many people, you want to vacillate between being kinesthetic, auditory, and visual. It's the same thing with this. It's the same thing with these personalities. And it's also important to realize that you are probably not just one personality as far as a typecast. Say, well, I don't know what I am. I think I'm a green. I'm very analytical and detailed oriented. Okay. But at the same time, you could also be a yellow. And as far as relationships are concerned, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, greens tend to marry blues. Yeah, blues and green tend to connect really well. These people want to have fun. These people want to be right and on time. These people are never on time. And the same thing with the red and the yellow. And I told a couple stories about meeting one of the spouses, and I was able to analyze them, sensory acuity. And I said, I think I know a little bit about your spouse. And they are XYZ. How did you know? How did you know my spouse was like that? Pretty easy, because I knew who you were. You were this personality, right? And most likely your spouse, your husband, your loved one was the opposite. So opposites tend to attract. If you want to be a great communicator, figure out which personality you are, but also learn to be flexible with other people, recognizing that other people share a different model of the world. They have different values, they have different beliefs, they're in different emotional states, and they have different targets that they're going after, values, things that are important to them. Some people, it's about money. I want to make a lot of money. Other people want to have a big family. Other people want to be significant. Other people want to be in control. Other people want to be safe. Other people want to be certain. So when you look at all of these things and you start dealing with a lot of people, you realize that there's only so many different patterns. And you're certainly not going to get along with everyone, right? It's impossible. But you can learn to be flexible with different people. The reason why there's conflict in relationships, the reason why there's conflict in conversations is because people think that they're sharing the same world. We are not sharing the same world at all. I mean, all you have to do is look at the election that happened in 2024, or you have to look at COVID that happened a few years ago in 2020. You had people that wore masks, they stayed inside, and then you had other people, they didn't wear masks, other people that got vaccinated, other people that didn't get vaccinated. I was down in Florida one time and I was listening to a friend of mine speak, and he said, you know, it really comes down to a person's worldview, their beliefs, their global beliefs, and how they were raised. He said, if you were raised in such a way that you did exactly what your parents told you, exactly what your teachers told you, you tended to do everything that you were told when they told you to wear a mask, get vaccinated, stay 6 feet away, wash your hands, etc., etc., etc. If you were rebellious, right, and you didn't listen to authority, most likely you didn't wear the mask. It has nothing to do with truth. It has to do with how you were wired as a 5-year-old. So I thought to myself, that is brilliant. So we don't share the same world. We have a different way of re-representing the world to ourselves. But when you realize the magic of different personalities, and I think the key word is curiosity. That's the key word. When you learn to be curious about other people. I'm curious. What did you think of this series? I'm curious. What did you think of my show? I'm curious. What did you think of my lecture? I'm curious. What did you think about XYZ? Then you use sensory acuity to see what they're saying, what they're not saying, the clues that they're giving you. Are they talking in visual, auditory, kinesthetic? Are they talking about goals? Are they talking very fast? Are they talking slow? Are they talking about being right? Are they connecting with you? Are they touching your arm when they're talking to you? Are they just lighting up when they're around you? These are all different types of personalities, and that's what makes the world go around. You know, my mom used to say, I still remember this, my mom's been gone for many, many years, but she used to say, every single person has an opinion. And it's like a nose on their face. Everyone has a nose, right? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, what does that mean? She says, everyone has an opinion. And you just have to respect it and recognize that they're coming from their point of view. That's it. So I hope this series was helpful for you. I had fun making it in 2024. I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email at greg@gregdwyer.com. Let's keep in touch. And just remember, not everyone sees the world the same way. And perhaps you don't either. I can tell you that I've known people that are very focused on results, but when they get stressed out, they turn into a yellow. And I've known other people that love to have fun, but when fun goes south, you know, they tend to rely on this part of their personality. So I hope you enjoyed this. Being a mind reader, if you're watching this now, I'm thinking that you did, because you got through all 4 series on how to know what other people are thinking without being a mind reader. We'll never know exactly what people are thinking. We won't.
60 seconds.
But we can figure out different personalities. We can use sensory acuity. We can get the feedback by asking questions, and we can make connections with people simply because we're learning to be flexible. So I don't know when you're watching this. I hope you have a great year, and let's keep in touch. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.